Title: What makes a person boring? I came here to be enlightened, not to be described. SMH. Haha, I wonder who all the boring people are. Fuck. Having zero interests outside of work. What about having zero interest in work? That would describe me. I'm a 22-year-old guy who is really interested in vintage sewing machines. I own two 1920s Singers, 6 1880s machines with no brand and a 50s Pfaff. I still feel like most people get bored with my sewing machine enthusiasm. I wish I was still interested in literally anything. Work sucks all the energy out of me and it ends up making me not interested in doing anything but sleep. I feel miserable sometimes. Outside of school, Oswell, you have just described the majority of the working populace. Shower, work, shower, TV, sleep, rinse and repeat, funeral. Having their personality centered around one single thing, and only that thing. Potheads and crossfitters. I'm gay, and the worst kind of gay person is the one that everything in their life is about being gay. It's so fucking boring. I get it. You're gay. I'm gay too. Gay rights are important. Yes. The same sex is hot. I agree. Drag Race is a fun show, yep. But like, learn an instrument or read a book or something, FFS. Or generally being unable to tailor conversation to things outside his interests, varied as they may be. Agreed, although I will add that it can be easy to mistake letting somebody get rolling on a subject they're passionate about for their personality being centered around a single thing. I dated someone who only wanted to fish. Ever. It was so boring. I'd take him to stuff and he would have a good time, but all he wanted to do was watch TV, fish, listen to rock. Now he does drugs too, but like, that's still it? There's nothing else. People whose whole personality revolves around their car. Talking about nothing but themselves. On the flip side, someone asking you so many questions that it feels like an interview. And when you try to turn the focus on them, they spike it right back. Alternatively, saying nothing about themselves. Fuck, I just met this guy a few days ago and I couldn't get a word in because all he talked about was himself and his accomplishments and everyone he knew who was apparently a big deal. Absolutely the worst thing to do when you're trying to make friends or meet someone new. Just talking to hear yourself talk and bragging constantly. Especially if it's negative stuff. Source: experience. I was a lonely kid. When they only talk about other people, like talking shit about people is their only personality. My roommate is just like that. OMG, don't get me started on him. Great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, small minds discuss people. Eleanor Roosevelt. And what if I only speak nice things about others? I don't think this is entirely fair. A lot of incredibly important fields such as history, psychology, economics, philosophy, etc. are entrenched in talking about other people. We are social animals, and talking about others is natural. Of course, going LOL Becky was such a slut last night isn't quite the same, but I've met a lot of people who are just genuinely interested in other people and are very empathetic. It's okay to like and be fascinated by other people. Agreeing with everything you say but never offering anything unique. I have this problem and don't know how to deal with it. If you give me 10 minutes, I could come up with something. But by then the conversation has moved on, or perhaps it has stopped altogether. Even just writing this, I took some time to think if I wanted to comment, and then what did I want to say? Agreed. Never in my life I have been offended so much with something that I 100% agree with. I've been doing this for years. Every time I say something meaningful it gets shit on or made fun of. I'm tired of being made fun of. Speaking up didn't work, so I dug myself in. When they agree with everything you agree with, you need to have your own opinions. This salad is excellent. I hate this restaurant and I hate your stupid face, Sally. I totally agree with you, dude. Suppose they actually do agree with everything you say and that's their own opinion at the same time. But what about the alternative where they disagree with everything you say, one-dimensional personalities? Like the always negative guy, the I only talk about work girl, or the all we do is talk about our pets or children couple. You get the gist. I think this is the best summary I've read on this thread so far. A guy I know recently started smoking weed and it's all he talks about. Every story starts with weed and it's so boring. We get it, you smoke weed, chill. A very good female friend I have, always complains about not calling her more for coffee, etc. Well, I don't have the will to listen to someone complaining about relationships and how awful men are for 1 hour and 50 minutes in a 2-hour meet-up. I think I might be boring, but in theory these people have complex motivations and influences and experiences. I don't get how you manage to become so one-dimensional to most people. Is it just anxiety so you always talk about the safe thing? Are you just that bored with life now? Or the all I do is put others down? Folks, even when it's just a joke, guys, relax. People get stuck, man, they plateau, they start ordering the same drink for the rest of their lives. It's like one of my biggest fears in life. No sense of humor. Is this supposed to be a joke or something? Cause I'm not laughing, not funny. I have the problem that I get the joke and I get that feeling of enjoyment, but it doesn't trigger a smile or a laugh. Sometimes after a joke I might say, don't worry, I get it, there's nothing out here, waves hand around face, but I'm smiling on the inside. Slightly worse, someone with a terrible sense of humor who also laughs like a dolphin at their own jokes. How do you gain a sense of humor? It doesn't only fit to boring people but also douchebags who think they are funny but doesn't understand how to be that. Just a prank, bro. Kind. Relying on other people to make all decisions. I think I should upvote this. Should I? Aw, fuck, everything in this thread is personally attacking me. I mean, that might make someone lack autonomy, but that doesn't mean they have to be boring. How do you stop from being that? I can't do final decisions in fear of doing it wrong or if the other person doesn't like it. The fact that people around me nearly never gives feedback about things I do doesn't help either. I'm sorry, I'm a pussy. I'm trying to better myself as of now. Both boring, tiring and stressing. Making your own decisions is hard, so imagine also making another adult's decisions. Considering all that can go wrong and not look controlling. But honestly, a lot of it comes down to storytelling. I remember listening to one of my cousins tell a story, and I realized it was super boring, but I was super interested, so I started paying attention to the way she tells stories. I like to think people are more interested in what I have to say now. But also I've had a pretty fucking crazy life so far, so there's a lot to talk about. What sort of approach did you observe with your cousin's storytelling? Not recognizing when no one is interested in what they're talking about. This skill is one of the worst to learn, because you were always telling something you were excited about and realized no one else cared. Sad face. There's a guy at my work who talks to me endlessly about his car. I don't drive and I've told him multiple times I'm not interested. He's a nice guy, so I don't want to be too stern, but fucking hell, cries in autism not being passionate about anything. I'm passionate about being unpassionate. I hate myself passionately for not having any other passions. Does that count? Till depression makes you boring. Till I'm a boring person. My brain is pretty much screaming in agony after reading this thread because I could relate to some parts but not to others. So I can't tell if I'm boring, not boring, or even half boring. To be fair, a lot of perfectly pleasant, positive, and likable people are a little boring. You can be guaranteed not boring by being a total train wreck instead. People without the username man68 are boring people not being able to have a meaningful conversation. I sometimes struggle with this. There are people I can talk to easily, without seemingly running out of things to say/ask, but if I feel I'm the one who has to initiate, I tend to get really wrapped up in my head about what to ask/say next, and then assume the other person must think I'm dull cause I can't chit-chat like a regular person. Then I see other people who can talk to anyone about anything and I'm like, was I sick the day they taught the talking like a normal person class at school? How was your day? Nice weather. We're having this. Is me honestly. I can't find a topic to talk about with strangers. Did you see that ludicrous display last night? Oh hi Tinder. My dad used to always say this, if you're bored, you're boring. I used to hate it, but there's some truth that the people in this world who are interesting are people who can find wonder in any situation. If you're bored, you're boring. The agony and the irony, they're killing me. Reminds me of the phrase interested is interesting. My interpretation is that you can have an engaging conversation with someone simply by listening to them and expressing interest in what they're saying. Make encouraging noises, ask follow-up questions, etc. Flagpole sitta. That hit me so hard. This was my first thought upon reading the question. The most boring people I've met have, without exception, been the first to call other people and places and situations boring. Because they can't find anything, not one single thing, interesting in something as complicated and various as a whole fucking person or a whole fucking city or a whole fucking topic or field of human endeavor. Incurious people are boring people. I'm quite a boring person. I'm very talkative and have interests and hobbies that most other people don't have or can't relate with, so when I talk about them and in my mind I'm being very passionate, the other person listening is getting bored to death. Especially because I'm very old school, so most people perceive my interests as mom/granny things, which just adds to the lame/boring vibe. Also, I am not comfortable being silent and sometimes keep talking for the sake of it. This one gets so boring even my boyfriend admits sometimes he gets sleepy listening to me talk like that. No creativity, no original ideas. Everything is predictable. Originality really is key. You know what they say, I don't even think you need to have original ideas, but rather just having ideas to share. Taking stances on subjects and being able to discuss them. People with no hobbies/skills. I remember always struggling to answer those questions, what are your hobbies, and in hindsight, I was just super dull and barely living. What are you into now? I didn't really have any real hobbies as a kid/teen because my family was poor, and because of that my parents never encouraged me to get a hobby as it could potentially cost a lot of money. I played video games but not sure if I would really consider that a hobby. Now that I'm grown up I've started playing guitar. No sense of humor and/or sense of adventure. We all love a humorous adventurer. Sense of adventure these days doesn't mean what it used to. Real adventure isn't all fun and games. Real adventure is 90% boredom for 10% action. About 50% of this thread is people that misunderstand what the word boring means, and comment on things that irritate them instead. This is the 5,000th red flags, thread in disguise. I observed the same. I thought I was the only one, lol, grinning face with smiling eyes. Those comments annoyed the hell out of me. They are so boring. When they don't ever do anything spontaneous, and act as if anything different/unique is weird and embarrassing. Oof. This is the first one that's really got me. Also, nothing worse than someone asking or expecting me to do something out of my comfort zone like karaoke or dancing. The second you want me to do it, it creates this imaginary pressure to me, and even if I might do it on my own, I definitely want now. I get embarrassed way too easily at things that no one would consider embarrassing. You gotta step out of your comfort zone. I am most productive and happiest when I have a set routine. If you want to change it, I need proper notice so I can prepare and plan accordingly so my routine has minimum impact. If it's last minute, all it will do is make me anxious the entire time, and I will find no enjoyment from something I might have otherwise really liked. I'm an avid Redditor. Till I'm the most boring person ever. Maybe that's why I've got no friends. When the only thing you have in common to talk about is school/work, any advice on opening up and speaking about something else? This isn't the only thing, but being so apathetic that you never express a real opinion or initiate a conversation/activity. The guy who says, I guess I like all music, or its variation everything but rap and country, if you ask what music he likes. The guy who says, I don't know, I don't really follow politics, if you mention literally any current event, no matter how apolitical. The guy who always says whatever you want to eat is fine. The guy who watches the TV in a trance when a football game is on, but doesn't get excited if his team is winning or losing because I don't really follow sports. The guy who has no favorite books or movies or video games, who doesn't have any hobbies aside from playing the same video game or drinking the same beer at the same bar, the guy who's never got anything to say, positive or negative, about anything around him. Everything and everyone are fine. He kind of likes stuff, I guess, in that he doesn't particularly hate it, but you also don't know if he is capable of hating anything because he never branches out of a narrow range of basic things. Or if he does, it's never wow, that's for introducing me to that, I like it, or OMG never expose me to that, it's awful. You show him a movie that doesn't star Adam Sandler or involve explosions, and it's I don't know, it was kinda weird I guess haha. This guy likes to paint himself as easygoing, chill, and lacking drama. But in reality, he is boring. He confuses a lack of tension with positivity. This doesn't mean that liking music, books, politics, sports, movies, or drama makes one interesting, but it at least gives a person something to talk about. If everything is I don't know fine, the ability to converse, connect, and expand is dead. I wish I could say that most of these guys are heavy stoners and are just too high to be expressive, but I have met plenty that have never touched a drug in their life. Nice description. So, a guy with a lack of passion, even to simple things, like sport, will be probably a boring person. Alright, just describe me mostly, why don't you? This is also a description of someone with depression, the guy who says I guess I like all music. I say that because I genuinely can't describe what kind of music I like. My playlist is a jumblefuck of genres with some memes sprinkled here and there. How am I supposed to explain this to another person? This sounds like me mostly. I'm like this because talking about things that actually interests me is stressful. I like technical topics. Repeatedly teaching people to communicate basic things gets exhausting. After 10+ years I used to do it and now don't. The only alternative seems to be at present dealing with a vacant bored gaze as I communicate about something technical you don't care about. Alternatively, I could fake having interests in the things listed above that seem pretty normal, but then I'd be bored with myself. I know a guy that seems like this to people who don't know him well. He's quite reserved, and if he doesn't really like or know someone, he just won't bother to talk to them about his interests. In reality though, he's one of the most easygoing people I've met. All it took was time to get to know him, and now once he gets started talking about one of his interests, he can go for hours and hours. I guess it's easy to write someone off as boring if you don't know them well enough, or if they don't really care to know you. Where are you finding these people? I've never in my life met anyone who checks off half those boxes. Sounds like you're describing someone on the verge of suicide. Let's grab a drink at the Winchester. Spending every bloody second of every minute of their life on Facebook, as opposed to Reddit. If you have utterly nothing in common with them, chances are you bore them just as much as they bore you. Tends to happen most with friends of a friend. I'm a boring person, so I'll list a few aspects of myself. 1. Rarely speaks. 2. Doesn't get involved in social hobbies. 3. Doesn't talk about anything outside of video games or any other entertainment. 4. Socially isolated. 5. Accepting the fact that I'll be alone. 6. Unable to make people laugh. 7. Never experienced what most people experience: parties, clubs, sex, etc. And many more. You're probably introverted, but I'm sure you're not boring not wanting to do anything. What I want to do is always boring to others. Are video games and watching movies something to do? You're boring if you don't post naked selfies on Reddit. Smooth. Winky face. Wow. Keep 'em coming. Winky face. Okay, but if you look at them you'll go to jail. I see that you're not boring. I guess I am. No tan lines. I find it really refreshing that you're not afraid of being judged. Good for you. People whose only activity in life is smoking weed and drinking alcohol, talking about smoking weed and drinking alcohol, talking about how high or drunk they were, and wondering when the next time it is that they will smoke weed or drink alcohol, while also being very loud about all of it, in public, in front of anyone. This really annoys me. As a young person, so many people around my age have drinking and drugs as their entire personality. They have no other hobbies and it's all the talk about, and they just bore me to no end. Don't get me wrong, I don't have a problem with people doing those things, but it shouldn't form your entire identity and life. You just described me from the age of 17 to 19. I know this girl whose personality is essentially I only type in caps because it makes me seem crazy, haha XD. Her entire gimmick is that she's insane, shouts all the time and thinks that gore and murder is cool. I'm aware that it doesn't sound boring to y'all, but after knowing her for almost a decade and it never changing, the whole thing just gets pretty tedious. Boring is subjective. What's fun for me is boring to you, so don't come at me and say me playing video games and watching anime is boring. Is that's what I like. I'll rephrase that. What's fun for me might be boring for you, probably spending all day posting self-hating comments and posts on Reddit. I feel that this may be a shot at me, but I'm not sure. Lack of humor or surprise, sending pics of half their neck and shoulder on Snapchat with no caption every day without actually engaging you in a real conversation. Exciting if you're a vampire. That's an oddly specific example. Or just saying streaks just to maintain the streak without doing anything else. Lack of curiosity and / or sense of humor. I would say I'm curious, but I'm not. Having a personality built exclusively around weed. I like the experience of it myself, but when all you can talk about are different strains and how it totally cures cancer, then please kill me instead of talking. If their identity is rooted in rejecting things they dislike, instead of embracing things they like, it makes a person small, unidimensional, and disconnected from the world. Have you ever noticed how, when people communicate their unpopular opinions, it's always something they dislike? Disliking things has become a trend, because by disliking something you risk absolutely nothing. By embracing something unpopular you do, and you actually become an individual. People who talk at length about people I don't even know. My sister-in-law has been telling stories about her grandpa for 20 years. I've never met him. They aren't funny stories, just things he used to say, do, etc. People have no self-awareness. Just yapping about Bob and Jane, whom I have never in my damn life met. But carry on drowning me in these stories. I do not care. Thinking that the world revolves around them. Close-mindedness. If you can't appreciate a different lifestyle, opinion, belief, etc. because yours in the right one, then I can't hold a conversation with you for more than 30 seconds. Close-mindedness. If you can't appreciate a different lifestyle, opinion, belief, etc. because yours in the right one, then I can't hold a conversation with you for more than 30 seconds. Yeah, but you can't really say that's boring. That's just not vibing. I saw a guy on Memory TV discussing if gays should be thrown off buildings or set on fire. I don't agree with him, but fuck, he ain't boring. Me and my friends were so drunk / high etc. Well, sometimes you can get genuinely fun stories from being drunk or high. Bringing it up every now and then for a good laugh doesn't make you boring. If you take life too seriously and can't make / understand jokes about death. There's a hair salon called Curl Up and Die. I don't know how to explain myself, so I'm telling a story. About 4 months ago I started dating a girl of my class. At first, our conversations were normal, just okay. We were just getting to know each other, and often we were telling each other about things that had happened to us during the week. The conversations quickly became monotonous once we knew each other enough. The only thing we talked about, literally, was how she was doing in his music school and how much stress she had. They demanded a lot but still liked music, so she continued to attend his classes. She didn't have hobbies, favorite books, favorite movies. She didn't have time for any of that. The only thing that defined it was that school. Even her personality was neutral. She wasn't funny, angry, outgoing, just nothing. Don't be this kind of people, please. I have a friend whose behavior is incredibly boring. Repetitive sense of humor, repetitive conversation topics, can never admit when he is wrong, and absolutely no drive or determination to do anything that requires a shred of effort. Indecisiveness. I think I agree, but I can't decide. They have to live a life full of regrets, not knowing what could have happened if they chose pizza. Negative all the time, non-interactive, cynical, just an absolute stick in the mud that can't smile. You just described 2/3 of Reddit. Chronic medical conditions. I have no life outside my limited world. There's a lot of different types of boring people. The ones that annoy me the most are: 1. The person who has no hobbies or passions. This person is either always just working/studying, but they're not passionate about what they're doing, they just do it. There's a difference between someone who at least loves what they do and someone who just goes along for the ride. Remember Steve Irwin? I bet if that guy was passionate about accounting he could still find a way to be the life of the party. 2. The person who just agrees with everything. This kinda goes along with the above, of not showing any passion towards anything. They just saw a movie. Oh, it was good. No discussion, no thought, just oh, it was good. They'll say that about Cats and they'll say it about Casablanca. This same person also never speaks up if the conversation goes to something heated like politics, and will rarely stand up for themselves or someone else. I sometimes wish I could prod these people a bit. Wake up. We live in a first world country and y'all walk around like zombies day in and out. Live a little, man. I fall squarely into group 1. Because I have depression, which makes it really tough to feel passionate about things. In regards to number 2, this is often because they spend time around people who will interrupt them or judge their opinion. Many people you think are boring were probably once excited by the movie they saw and able to talk at length about it. They never speak up because when they have in the past, they've been ridiculed. Perhaps the reason is because we live in a first world country in which everyone is able to have an opinion. In such an environment, how can everyone be heard? Repeating themselves. Repeating themselves more annoying than boring. I think this could be because they're often ignored or talked over when talking to people/groups of people. When I notice this happening, I normally will let whoever interrupted them finish and then say sorry _______, what were you saying, and let them finish. It's normally very appreciated by that person, and also subtly lets the other people in the group realize that they completely ignored someone who was trying to communicate with them. Sometimes it happens so often that the other people in the group don't realize they're doing it, so this is kind of a gentle prod for them to be more self-aware too. My ex, all he ever spoke about was work. One time he phoned me and I recorded myself saying yeah, and kept it playing as I went downstairs, made a coffee, and he didn't even realize that I was gone and he was still talking about work when their whole personality is made up of one thing, be it their gender, their sexuality, their religion, etc. Edit, I want to add a bit of clarification. As a person who has been living in a foreign country years now, I notice that most expats have this mentality of always mentioning their country or their culture. As a result, they find it too difficult to adapt into the new culture of the country they live in. I understand where it comes from, the longing and homesickness, so it doesn't make them necessarily boring, just boring to me personally to have a friendship, as I am quite adapted to my new home. No curiosity. No it-alls. Source, I used to be one. I knew that. Little to no contribution in conversation. I have a friend and she's the most boring person I've ever met. It's sad, but she has little to no friends because how little she knows how to act or make conversation. It's mostly cool or okay to everything I say. Alright, got a friend like that and he is too passive with everything. He doesn't understand why he is losing friends right and left. He just wants to stay in his fragile comfort zone and do nothing. I barely talk to him because he tends to just nod to everything I say to him. It gets boring very fast. Usually trepanation. I'd say drilling holes in your skull is pretty interesting. Some topics are inherently boring, namely things that are only interesting to you because they happen to you and don't offer any insight to other people. Here's a short list of the least interesting topics. Your dreams. The very definition of a singular experience, no matter how wild and crazy it was to you, it didn't actually happen. It doesn't have a plot. It doesn't have a point. The act of dreaming is not unique either. In my entire life I think I've only heard 2 stories about dreams that were at all interesting from an outside perspective. Your kids. There's too much personal bias for a parent to tell what's a funny or interesting story about their kid and what is inane day-to-day happenings. Plus, being a parent is boring as fuck, so from their perspective that story is probably the most interesting thing their toddler has ever done, but to everyone else it falls flat. Drinking and drug trips. There's some funny stories about drinking and drugs, but it takes brutally self-deprecating humor and good storytelling to make these accessible. If the entire story is me and my friends all got cataclysmically trashed, probably just keep those fond memories to yourself. It's fun, but it's usually nothing to write home about. Having sex. Similar to drug stories, we all know sex is fun. But unless we're the ones having it, we don't care how fun it is for other people. Unless there's a real gem there, some bizarre and unexpected turn of events, some wacky antics, some real hilarity ensues type shit, no one wants to hear sex stories that basically come off as bragging. It's okay to talk about yourself, but talk about the interesting stuff you do. Or talk about what insights you've learned, or why you're passionate about something. Boring people take normal things that happen to everyone, and expect you to care because these normal things happen to them, and that is lame. Really? I find dream talk interesting, but mainly stories about hilariously stupid or weird dreams cause I find them funny. Boring people take normal things that happen to everyone, and expect you to care because these normal things happen to them. I know someone like this. Always acting as if he's this great life explorer because he sleeps around and does a lot of coke. He will also repeat as an original opinion / story / observation something he's heard me say before. It's pretty unsettling. The stuff that happens to everyone can be a very good way to bond, though, as long as you keep it general and only dive into, slightly, more specifics after someone / the group asks you to. For instance, dreams are indeed one of the most boring stories ever. However, I have had some great discussions and bonding moments over general weird dream mechanics. For instance, we were once discussing which of our senses work in dreams. Sight and hearing is pretty common, but the other senses are rarer. Sometimes touch works for me, and only once in my life I could taste something. Some of the others never had that, but they frequently smell stuff in their dreams, which is something I have never had happening to me, so I found that fascinating. So, that opens the avenue for questions, and thus discussions. The commonality of these everyday experiences can be fantastic bonding discussions, as long as specific storylines are not the focus and only offered after request. I don't care about your dreams. However, the dream you were on Mars and could smell it had me piqued after our discussion. I can't say I agree with the dreams one. My coworker and I talk about our super weird dreams semi-frequently, and it's pretty fun. Certainly better than the weather or whatever other random small talk. I find people who never dream or wouldn't ever talk about it to be far more boring, honestly. I guess it's a matter of taste. Personally, you've listed several of my favorite subjects to hear people talk about and to talk about. Kids and sex and drugs and dreams are in, probably descending order, really important parts of people's lives. I care about what the person I'm talking to cares about. I'm interested if they're excited. Also, kids are hilarious and sometimes crazy, and a good sex or drinking / drug story or dream can easily be a good story. I'm not saying never go skydiving or travel abroad or win a Nobel Prize. I'm just saying most people only do those types of things a few times in a lifetime, and the guy that never shuts up about those subjects is way more annoying and boring to me than the person telling the story I can relate to. I don't think I would get along with you / the _river _ Nihil. You're coming off, to me, like you just don't care about other people's lives very much if it's not about you. Boring is relative. Maybe the people who don't share their interests with you don't like you that much and don't want you to know what their personal life like. You see them as boring, but that may not be the case. Chances are you bore them as well. All exactly, so many comments here are so self-obsessed, not everyone wants to put on an act for your benefit. Continually talking without ever saying anything interesting. This is 100% things extroverts find annoying thread. Because all this stuff that people like 80% of I find not a problem as the opposite end of the spectrum. All of us have interests or hobbies that are not interesting to the average person, and there's nothing wrong with that. An important of social acumen is being able to recognize when an interest of yours is not interesting to the person you're talking to, and to change the subject if this is the case. For example, I am really interested in photography, and could talk for hours about depth of field and shutter speed if I had to. This is not interesting to most people, so I don't talk about it unless I'm talking to someone who has expressed an interest in this topic. Usually if they can't have/be fun without drugs/alcohol/nicotine/caffeine, then they're a boring person. That's not always true, but especially with younger people it is. Being scared of the world. Being easily shocked or flustered. Avoiding things that challenge you. Being the color beige, if that makes sense. LOL. Nothing stands out about them. Nothing they are passionate about. Someone who is completely apathetic, I guess, is the simplest way to put it. Talking about roads. So, which way did you come to get here? Oh, I just went where my GPS told me to. So was that the A637 or did you cut through the Schnargle roadway? I don't know. I just don't know. The 637 can be pretty bad with traffic this time of the morning, so you probably looped round the hurdy-gurdy bypass. Leave me alone, for the love of God. I could not agree with you more. I have a relative who tells you exactly how he got somewhere, like the entire route. Even if you already know the route, or never plan on going there. It's hard to feign interest every time. Poor dude. As an introvert, this thread is terrifying to read. It feels like I am being called out. Following trends just because it's trendy, trying to fit in, always complains about their life and doing nothing to improve themselves. Everything about me a lack of curiosity. Lack of curiosity. If, when offered an idea, they immediately say no. People who only care about making or having money. I just yawn when someone tells me their life plan and it looks like my dad's and my grandfather's. That basic blueprint is just so boring. Who said you have to finish college at 22 and get married at 24 and have a couple of kids before age of 30 and then grind till you die? Having absolutely no personality of their own, or not having any hobbies whatsoever. I once dated a girl whose only hobby was laying on her couch, watching Netflix, and who was extremely uncultured in every sense of the word. She got zero joke references to anything at all other than Star Wars. It was the fastest I ever ended a relationship. Well, it's not exactly my fault that I'm boring. I just have so much social anxiety that when I talk to people that I don't know very well I get really nervous and don't know what to say, so I end up being someone I'm not and just being really quiet around most people. I don't know what to do. OMG. I'm like this as well. If any respective therapist is reading this, please suggest what we should do. When that person is selfish and always think of himself. Always having to be right. I think this one is more of a frustrating trait than boring. You're wrong about this. When they don't play with fire all the time. Fire is what keeps us interesting. Not being a dog. There are many factors which make a boring person. Inability to continue interaction. Not having well-thought opinions worth having a meaningful discussion. Taking things too personally to not enjoy jokes. Unable to enjoy company of people. Only people which aren't boring are ones who are willing to interact with people of different opinion. If you only stay with people of same opinion, there will be nothing new or exciting to talk about. Being on Reddit when they are telling me who and how I am minutes after just meeting me. Mostly dudes that are like, oh yeah, you're acting so cool, but I can see right though that you're super sensitive, blah blah blah. It just makes me think, wow, if you know everything already, why do I keep talking to you? So I stop. Just makes them so boring to assume everything instead of asking intelligent questions if they want to get to know someone. Great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, small minds discuss people. Eleanor Roosevelt. Nothing. The problem begins in the eye of the beholder. There is nothing in this world that concretely defines one person as boring. It is those who dislike the deviation from what society sees as fun. For example, I don't drink, and you wouldn't believe the amount of comments I had at social events growing up, such as, you don't drink? God, you are boring. It is easier to offload negative qualities onto the external rather than questioning our internal values, which got us into that mindset in the first place. What if you just think the person is boring because they think that one topic is the only thing they can talk to you about from their lives? Basically, they just boring to you, not to everyone. I don't know, over time I stopped thinking of anyone as a boring person, including myself. You just maybe don't have enough in common to have more conversations. Have a DM chat with me and you'll know lack of sense of humor. A great sense of humor goes a long way in life. Can't keep up a conversation. If they don't want to be there, they won't / can't keep up the conversation and they become boring to be with. Looks in mirror, not reading the room, so to speak. Offering more information on a topic no one has asked about or showed any interest in when brought up. Being dead, not learning anything from their hobbies. Yeah, this counts for passionate people too. Having a hobby can help becoming a more interesting person, sure, but having a single focus on your life without applying what you learned from it in other aspects of your life can potentially make you boring. You like video games? Awesome. Tell me how you understand why war is wrong after playing Metal Gear Solid. Tell me what emotional awakening you had after playing Final Fantasy. Tell me how you learned how you got into real-life cooking after playing Cooking Mama. You like toy trains? Wonderful. Tell me what you learned from the Swiss culture after buying or building that famous Swiss train. Tell me how you got curious on how the electrical system of your house works after building a diorama with dozens of lights. Tell me about the long journey by train you're saving for. You like knitting? Beautiful. Tell me how you realized how you feel like meditating while working and this helped you overcoming stress. Tell me about the handmade socks and blankets you donate to charities. Tell me about that funny time when you asked your grandma about her super secret patterns. You like reading books or watching movies? Fantastic. Tell me which stories changed your life. Tell me which characters you resonate with. Tell me how you improved your inner and outer existence from the experience. Picking a hobby out of boredom is perfectly okay, but not having a real opinion on it and not gaining any profit in terms of personal growth can turn it into mindless consumption of products. When picking a hobby, you actually pick a tool for your personality to express itself. An inability to have an intellectual conversation. I like debating and discussing advances in science and technology. I find endless gossip or random stories about the day to be boring, especially because I spend all day every day having those kinds of conversations with clients. I can kind of empathize. There is someone I have spent a decent amount of time with, but the conversation never goes beyond the superficial level down to anything remotely personal. Someone who uses the opinions of others as their own opinion. When I heard the "well, I identify as a attack helicopter" words come out of someone's mouth, I knew they just like to hear something and make it their own instead of investing in and researching their own point of view and opinion on a topic. Very surface, no opinions, or easily swayed by others, no significant life experiences. People who get bored are boring people. Complacency when they're incurious and sit on the fence about every important issue. A person who out loud claims that they have everything. I don't know, I don't really have an opinion either way. When they hog the conversation to talk about themselves. Or otherwise don't contribute to the conversation. Having no interesting hobbies or activities to talk about or share. Only caring about, or talking about, one thing. Like work. Inability or unwillingness to read, study or explore the world around them, and form their own opinions. A complete lack of curiosity in anything. Being self-obsessed. I have no idea but somehow still feel like I check all the boxes talking about the same topics repeatedly for days. When they don't listen to what others in a convo are saying because they're simply lining up to talk about themselves. Bonus points for when it's not even related to the general topic/s of discussion. I'm a boring person apparently. Sadness. Boring persons sound when people have babies and then the only thing they can talk about is babies and baby crap. Like having a baby makes you holier than thou and everyone should fawn over you 24/7. After going through some of the answers I agree with most of them, but truth is, you do. If you are interested in any way in the person, not only romantically, the person can talk all day about work that your stupid mind will find it interesting. I think a lot of it is people being unwilling or unable to share anything personal because they are afraid people won't like them. It's a defense thing, no one just likes one thing, but sometimes it's hard to open up. Like if you're reading in 2020, I find this hard to judge that. I have time of day for anyone. If it's a hobby or interests, let me hear about it. Yes, it may be something that in general may not interest me, but from hearing that, I've learned something new and it's lovely that you felt that you could share that with me. When a person does not have any interests, or at least never mentions their interests. My brother had a girlfriend for 2 to 3 years. She stayed over a lot, and I tried talking to her, but I never knew what she liked. She just didn't seem like she had any passions, hobbies, or just things she was enthusiastic about. I always love to hear people talk about stuff they really enjoy, even if I have no interest in it myself. It tells you a lot about their personality as well, and she just didn't seem to have a personality. Really boring. I remember reading a quote on this matter. Interesting people talk about ideas. Boring people talk about other people. Intolerable people talk about what they drank the night before. I don't remember anything else about the quote, other than where I read it, Saturday Morning Breakfast Comics, literally everyone if I just look at the comment here. I'm not sure. Guys, why am I boring? Anyone who considers their ethnicity as their personality. Used to take a class with a girl who over the course of the year became heavily influenced by K-pop culture. We talked in November and she said she's so Asian now. I'm very Asian, you know. Yes, I know you're Thai, honey, but you were born in Australia and grew up here. We went to the same high school BTW, so I've seen how normal she used to be. Wearing their ignorance like a badge of honor. Brief mention of a video game? Oh God, I don't know anything about video games. I'm completely lost. I have no idea what you're talking about. Talk goes to the gym. OMG, I have no idea about the gym. I'm so unhealthy. I have no idea. Conversation leads to politics or world events/news. I don't know anything about politics. This is way over my head. Yada yada yada. Narcissists who only know how to talk about themselves, and/or people who only talk about one thing regardless of whether or not the person they're talking to knows anything about said thing. Boring, boring people don't believe anyone here. It's a subjective statement places on people that another couldn't understand or get excitement from. Nobody is boring. We all have great things about us that the right people will enjoy. Never call someone boring, just cut your losses and realize you both don't mesh. We all hang out and talk to someone with a certain expectation, and if they don't meet it, in regards to being entertaining or fun, we place that boring label on them. When in reality it's probably the person calling them boring who is the problem. Not everyone walks around all peppy, smiling and blah blah. Takes some people time to get comfortable, and they probably weren't comfortable with the person. We all have multiple emotions, consistent personality changes, and things we enjoy. If you failed to find that in a person, he/she isn't boring. You're just judgmental and wasn't patient enough to understand the person. Talks about the same thing every time you fail to avoid them. Always talks about how they have the short end of the stick, talking about shopping. Talking about clothes. Talking about shopping for clothes. When a person can only talk about themselves to carry a conversation. One of the biggest ones is people retell the same stories about themselves over and over. I'm sorry, but I don't want to hear about your bad knees and how you used to play basketball. If I can't have an intellectual conversation with you, then I don't have time for it. An utter lack of curiosity. Not wanting to do anything, not wanting to talk about anything, not wanting to go anywhere, nothing going on in their foreseeable future, semi-decent conversations on 2 to 3 things max, and Minecraft music. A bore is someone who deprives you of solitude without providing you with company. Oscar Wilde. Last week I purchased a particularly nice 24-piece set of pale blue plastic Tupperware containers. It was financially reckless of me, but they were in a 25% discount sale. Also, it is summer, can I not let my hair down a bit? I brought the pack home and arranged the containers on the kitchen table in descending size order, using the bubble sort algorithm. It was at this point I discovered to my delight that there must have been a labeling error at the factory, for there were in fact 26 pieces, not 24. I nevertheless felt obliged to check my excitement and call up the manufacturer to warn them of a potentially serious commercial oversight. I spent the next 3 hours carefully labeling each container and placing them inside one another, testing the interplay between each and writing down the best stack combinations, scoring them out of 10. 2 containers, in particular, have a very impressive flush when the smaller is pushed into the larger. I was in fact so impressed by this that I took said containers to work the following day to show my colleagues this particular example of fine plastic manufacturing. But they just weren't that interested. I think it's because they have kids. It's having children that makes a person boring, I am afraid. When you have children, you don't have time for Tupperware anymore. When they live only to consume things created by others but have no interest in creating anything themselves. When their entire identity is constructed around the things they consume. And worst of all, the connoisseurs, this type of cuisine/art/entertainment/fashion validates me by conforming to the arbitrary parameters that I feel are correct, whereas this other type of cuisine/art/entertainment/fashion does not conform to these parameters, and therefore it is beneath me. We can all enjoy things, but people are critics for a reason. Parameters set by experienced in their craft aren't arbitrary in the slightest. You just want to invalidate their opinion because you have a personal distaste for them. Mentioning The Office more than once in the first 5 conversations with them. If they dislike strawberry ice cream, it's the best flavor. Try and change my mind, the first to be second behind mint. Strawberry is nice, but have you had chocolate chip cookie dough? Wow, after reading all of the comments I'm boring as fuck. And yet, I don't care, lol. According to this comment section, being part of any extreme on any spectrum, ever living in fake reality. Everything is football and Netflix. Like, okay, so you spend your spare time not existing, cool. Constantly quoting TV shows. No creativity, nothing insightful, it shows a total lack of personality and depth. I'm trying to think of a Seinfeld or Simpsons quote to throw at you here, but I'm drawing a blank. Damn, I'm even a boring person. Never wanting to do something they haven't already done before. After reading all these comments, I just realized I'm the most boring person ever. Face with tears of joy, I find most loud people boring. I am not sure if it is due to my anxiety/introversion, but loud people make me want to run away. I often find they have the same personalities too, and it just bores me. The loudest mouths usually have the littlest to say. A person may be the most boring on the planet to you, and yet be the most interesting person ever to someone whose interests are more in line with them. Having absolutely no sense of humor. When they go on and on about their kids. Agreeing only when you agree, adding no flavor to the conversation, just going with the flow. I understand that can be an anxiety reflex, but when I notice it with good friends, it gets to me. Talking exclusively about things you have no experience with or any interest in. Or worse, something you do have experience in and hate, but in the OMG I hate this thing so I'm gonna rag on it for the next few hours kinda way. Spends way too much time on Reddit. Dragging the conversation even when it's over. People who completely lack imagination and the ability to think abstractly. Mainly because all conversations with a person like that becomes some version of small talk, which is a total snooze fest in the long run. I think everyone is interesting, you're just not interested in them. That's what makes them boring to you, but to others, not so much. When that someone becomes a parent and their life is now 100% about their kid. Even when the kid is more grown up and more independent, their life is all about the kid and being a parent to said kid. Look, I get it. I have 3 of my own. But you still gotta have hobbies, right? Things that you enjoy that don't involve kids. Conversations that have nothing to do with parenting. You can still have your own life after having a kid. I don't wanna hang out with you if all you talk about is your kid or how you parent. Always laughing at everything or not ever laughing at anything, in my opinion, it's a lack of sense of humor, lack of imagination and ignorance. Also, I hate it when people are discussing other people's lives, like what car they have, the amount of money they earn, who they sleep with, etc. I have such a colleague at work irritating me so much, and she is constantly complaining about not having friends. Really, what's the matter this dude at work? I've never read a book in my life, and honestly I don't understand why people think they need to learn when everything's online. Matter of opinion. Someone might be boring to one person but exciting to another. Being normal people aren't usually boring to everyone. If someone shares no hobbies or interests with you, they'll seem boring. This means the more strange/esoteric someone's hobbies are, only reads manga, spends all their time just practicing the tuba, choreographs interpretive dance for a living, the more they need to have other things to balance them out so they don't seem boring to others. Only if they care about seeming boring. Having a job that pays just enough to pay the bills and nothing else. Oh, and it's a 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. shift. Pretty much guarantees no social life or chance at a relationship. Even if the shift was better, just enough money to exist. Being bland on the inside. They could look like the most interesting person from the outside, but on the inside they have nothing else to them. I would say people that have no passion. It often comes off as no opinion, but people with no opinions on some things could be intensely focused and passionate about others. As long as you can find that thing that someone is passionate about, they won't be boring, at least in my opinion. So only people who are truly boring are people who either don't have anything that they are interested in enough to talk deeply about or are unwilling to speak on the subject. On the other side, the most interesting people are either people who have an incredible passion for something, people who have several passions they can speak on, or people that are deeply interested in others' passions and can bring them out. Only answering in short sentences or just words like, aha, lol, okay, ikr. Like, dude, I'm trying to start a conversation here. Someone who only asks questions and turns the conversation into an interview. People who think everyone has to be excited about everything all the time, otherwise they are boring. Tongue sticking out. Firstly, boredom is subjective. That being the case, for me it's someone that lacks uniqueness. Who they are as a person or what they value doesn't chime at all with how they express themselves or what they're expressing. A monotone with not a lot to say can be more interesting than someone who endlessly talks, or vice versa. Lots of people saying talking about yourself is boring, but asking endless questions about me and my life also makes you boring. There is a balance between the two if they talk at you and not to you. Being too passive. You don't even have a suggestion of what genre of movie we should go see? When we should next meet? What we should do this weekend? Where we go to eat? You have no political opinions. No preferred ways to spend your time that you care to discuss? No opinions on world news? I don't expect someone to make every decision or be knowledgeable enough to have an opinion on everything, but if you just have an approach to everything, every plan and conversation will feel one-sided. From my father, who was a taxi driver once. I often try to engage in conversation with people, but often the answers are or yep, or just plain ignoring it. I felt this one talking about and showing vids/pics of their kids all the time. We have somebody at work who is extremely nice, but once the conversation moves on to something personal or anecdotal, she is clearly uncomfortable and says nothing. Even stuff like "do much last night? What do you think of? Plans for the weekend?" So you are constantly in danger of the conversation slipping this way and this very nice person being rude towards you. She is a frustrating character and proof that being nice isn't, on its own, enough. If I was to summarize her, I would say she is boring. Nobody else at work makes me feel as bad about myself as she does every now and then. Gaslighting me into thinking I've said something wrong. In our college, there was this guy. He always kept to himself, never made any efforts to mingle with people or even initiate small talk. He would reply if you went to him and asked something. But that's it. In my first year, most of us had labeled him as an introvert and boring. Since he didn't participate in the daily gossips and preferred to enjoy on his own, even people didn't bother to approach him. Can you guess what happened after 4 years? He was the most sought-after guy. He would get 5 to 10 calls daily from different groups to join them. He still preferred to spend his time alone when he wanted to, and the rest of the time he could just go anywhere and be part of any activity. 4 years and his label had changed from boring to cool. Turns out, he was indeed the coolest guy you could come across. He always had something interesting to offer, could make fool out of someone without even changing his expression, and was so damn good at everything he did. The best part is, I never saw him worry about anything except girls. Yes, there was a proposal that made him bathe in his sweat. Point is, you can't label someone without even knowing them. And even if you get to know someone well enough, it doesn't mean everyone else will share your thoughts. What's boring to you, could be extremely entertaining to me. So if someone is boring to you, that's just your perception, not a generalization. In the end, you brand someone as boring according to your interests at any given point of time. Remember, people change with time, and so does your perception. Everybody is inside a true self-seeker. So the real clue to make an impression on somebody is to talking about him. Being a mirror of him. Oh, I'm expert in this. Rating might be subjective. I'll add more specific info when I get more time. 1-4/10 boring stage. When person only has one hobby, and always encounters different situations. I can respect that the person has one hobby and doesn't give up on it, but seriously, is there nothing else going on in your life? It's not too boring, and those people can be interesting, so 1-4/10 boring depends on how bad the case is. 5-9/10 boring stage. When you know person too well, maybe been living together or just meeting too often. When you talked about most of interesting stories that happened to both of you, and you are just talking about what happens in your regular life and use alcohol to make things better. You still kinda of enjoy the people, but sometimes lose interest, and you often go on your phones to avoid each other. 10/10 critical boring stage. Basically lack of social skill and standards. For example, responding with okay or not being direct enough, because I feel like honesty and being straightforward could fix many things. OFC, they also have cons, but much less. Also, inability of person to tell something or start a conversation. But come on, fking okay, seriously. Who the F are you? These types of questions trying to get attention every time, yet existing people that not matter the topic, they always manage to steer the conversation towards themselves and their alleged accomplishments, especially when it comes to sex and their sexual life, with emphasis on how active they are. Like, we get it, you have a lot of sex and that's great, I'm happy for you, but seriously, don't you have anything else to talk about? No sense of humor. Too politically correct. So uptight you always have to walk on eggshells lest they throw a hissy fit. Being passionless. Having no hobbies. Being ungrateful. Being unkind. Being too kind. Making everything about themselves. Interrupting when anyone speaks. Drinking too much alcohol. Taking too many drugs. Making everything about being intoxicated. Always being in competition, especially where it is inappropriate. You have a sickness. There's no way it can be as bad as my sickness, insert TMI. Defining themselves by their disability/illness. Not helping themselves. Never having anything good to say. Never having anything bad to say. Airing dirty laundry on the social media. Never opening up past basic pleasantries. Being too open at the wrong time. Blah blah blah. I should note, I only have one friend,